Police in Japan say that a man has confessed to assassinating former Prime Minister Shinzo Abe. 41-year-old former Navy officer Tetsuya Yamagami is accused of shooting Abe in the back while he was campaigning in the city of Nara. Well, in a dramatic video of the killing, 2 distinct gunshots are heard before security guards wrestle the gunman to the floor. What appears to be a homemade gun then falls to the ground. Japanese Prime Minister Fumio Kishida said that the killing was barbaric.
In the midst of an election, which is the root of democracy, this dastardly event took place. I would like to use the harshest words to condemn this unforgivable act.
We can now bring in Koichiro Matsumoto now, who is the Director of Global Communications for the Office of the Prime Minister in Japan, and he joins us from Tokyo. Thank you so much for being with us. And of course, this is devastating news for Japan, and we want to say how sorry we are to see something like this. What does Shinzo Abe mean to Japan?
Well, as my previous speaker has just mentioned, he's the longest-serving Prime Minister of Japan and one of the most prominent leaders of our time. And among the people he met, he was held in high regard for his deep commitment to diplomacy, economy, and national security. And he was a strong believer in Japan. He helped his nation recover economically. I'm sure many of you know heard of Abenomics, which is to do with the flexible fiscal policy, aggressive monetary policy, and the growth strategy. This sowed the seed for an economic recovery that continues today. And also, he was very eager to upgrade Japan's defense capability and security legislation.
Of course, this happened during a campaign speech. Are you concerned there in Japan, in the government, that this is more than just the assassination of a man, tragic, horrendous in itself, but this, in fact, could be seen as an attack on democracy?
Well, we are not yet fully aware of the background of this terrible attack, and the violence as such should not be tolerated under any circumstances. This is the statement delivered by Prime Minister Kishida earlier today, and he was very stern in his resolution that he will conduct the upcoming upper house election scheduled on Sunday.
You spoke about the political legacy of Mr. Shinzo Abe. I'm wondering, how do people in Japan feel right now? What is the mood there in the country after this shock?
Well, to say the least, the nation is in shock. We are feeling excruciating pain. And I have seen the face of Prime Minister Kishida when he was addressing the press yesterday afternoon. But I can feel the suffering from the loss. You see, Prime Minister Kishida became an MP the same year as former Prime Minister Abe, and they have been very good friends ever since they were elected in the same year. Prime Minister Kishida was Prime Minister Abe's foreign minister for 4 years and 8 months. So you can see the collegiality between the two leaders.
Indeed. You mentioned previously, of course, that you are in the middle of an election period there in Japan, and there are intentions for that to continue. But nevertheless, what happens next? Will there be a period of mourning there in Japan?
Well, we haven't come up with that period. Well, since we are in the election period, we are not in the, and of course, this tragic attack took place only yesterday. So we have not been able to discuss that matter in detail.
All right, Koichiro Matsumoto, the Director of Global Communications for the Office of the Prime Minister of Japan. We really do appreciate your time with us today on a very difficult day.
Thank you so
much. Well, I spoke to Dr. John Nilsson Wright, an associate professor in Japanese politics at the University of Cambridge, and he told me how Shinzo Abe reinvigorated Japan's old alliances and created new ones.
Mr. Abe was really a transformative figure in Japanese politics, serving for 8 years. Japan was a committed supporter of the international rules-based order, and there were so many policies that were initiated under his leadership, establishing a National Security Council in 2013, strengthening the power of the cabinet, developing new legislation to allow Japan's self-defense forces to participate in collective security initiatives, allowing Japan, therefore, to not only rely on its traditional alliance with the United States, but build new security partnerships with countries like Australia, with India, with European partners, particularly France and the United Kingdom. All of this added up to a very innovative set of foreign policy initiatives. Mr. Abe used a very broad range of policy instruments, not just security policy, economic policy, public diplomacy. He was an indefatigable traveller. He developed a network of connections with international leaders. We've seen that reflected in the outpouring of public statements by heads of state across the world and in the aftermath of this news. So there's no, I think, overstating the impact of Mr. Abe as a foreign policy innovator.